So welcome everyone to this future-proof container terminal episode. Today we got an interesting guest, Robert Kahn, aka Robbie, and I will describe why interesting. Robbie had been training leaders worldwide. You know, he had been training the guys at the United Nations. He had been involved in multiple industries, maritime, transportation, retail, among many others. And, you know, not only training top management, but also mid-management leaders and also guys on the hand job. So it's really interesting, his approach on the leader like you methods, and especially these days that we are hearing more and more digital transformation, climate change, people rethinking their why and try to align their why with the company's why. We need to be quite aware of all the skills that we need to develop as leaders. So with that being said, Robbie, welcome to the virtual stage.
Thanks, Chris. It's great to be here. It's always good to see you.
Great, Robbie. So the plan for today, Robbie, is that we have been putting together some questions around leadership, some concepts about your leader like you approach. And if you're okay, let's go for it, Robbie.
Dive right in.
So, Robbie, for those who haven't got the chance to meet you yet, could you tell a little bit more about who is Robbie?
So I'm French American, and I was born and raised in Minnesota. I ended up going to high school in Mexico, and I've lived in Europe since 1985. So I speak French, Spanish, German, and English, and a couple other languages. And my career started in finance, and then I moved to PR and communication. My father gave me a good piece of advice. He said, you know, if you want to work in business, in any organization, start with the numbers. After that, you can always make another decision. So I did. I started with the numbers. I started in finance. I even worked for an audit firm. And then I started moving away from it into more the messaging around the numbers. So public relations and marketing. And so today I've had my own company for 20 years, and I help people on presentation skills, positive impact, looking to see who they are as a leader, and then also emotional awareness around that. So about a third of what I do is that, and about a third of what I do is team cohesion and how leaders engage with their teams, how leaders move from one level of leadership to the next, from being an individual contributor to a leader of others, to a leader of leaders, to a functional leader, to maybe an enterprise leader or organizational leader, all the way up. And then the last third of what I do is also another love, is master of ceremony, is helping organizations run their events so that they're on time with good messaging, and I'm taking responsibility for getting them through all that. So I just love the master of ceremony piece as well. And that's what I do.
Really, really interesting journey here, Robbie. And yeah, we got the chance to meet at Mexico, and it was really, really interesting that how you change our mindset, and there was like a before and after. We go through your leaders like other course, but as a starting point over here, Robbie, you know, these days we are hearing a lot about digital transformation, a lot of change management, the COVID change our way of living, our way of working. Now these you know, companies now going back from a remote way of working to the office, all these topics. So how will you describe the role of leadership these days?
For me, I would say it's about flexible inspiration. You know, a lot of times we talk about motivation. I need to motivate my people. And the truth is that we cannot motivate anybody. All we can do as a leader is create the conditions where people can become motivated, or create the conditions where we lose motivation. So that comes through our ability to inspire other people. And the reason I say flexible inspiration is because we are in a very fluid situation. And what worked pre-COVID might not work today. So we're constantly looking inside ourselves to find how do I create those inspirational characteristics which will then help my people become, retain, motivated, and even motivate other people.
Really interesting thoughts, Robbie, and good that you mentioned this motivation aspect and how we as as leaders, you cannot motivate your team members in the same way. So somehow you need to identify how can you motivate them, and that link us to our next question. And during this pandemic, a lot of things happened. We changed our way of living, our way of working, and especially these days, you probably hear that many of us, we are, rethinking or refining our why, and also try to identify how can we align our why with the company why. So could you share your thoughts around this?
Well, when I work with groups, I draw a cross and I put 3 concentric circles. One quadrant is the leader's quadrant. One quadrant is the team's quadrant. One quadrant is internal stakeholders, and one quadrant is external stakeholders. The inner concentric circle is why. So if we start with the leader, the question is, the leader needs to become clear, why do I do what I do, and why should you be led by me? Once the leader has clarity on that, the leader can explain that to their team, and potentially to the external internal stakeholders. So it starts with leaders why. After that, the next level after the why is to help the team understand, why are we a team? And why should we exist as a team? Could we be a group? Could we be a team? And then as we look to work with our internal stakeholders is, why should you take anything or interact with us? And why do we interact with our external stakeholders? So for me, it starts with why, split into 4. Once we have the why, comes how. How am I going to work with you? So how is the leader, once I know why I do what I do, how am I going to work with my team? And then the outer is, what do I do? What are my annual objectives? What do I want to do? What's my program? Which leads us directly to the team. Now that we know our why, how are we going to work? Do we have team agreements as a team charter? Do we know how we need to behave with each other to get high performing results? And the outer one is, what are we also doing? So get clarity on that. And then the why, the what, and the how also for internal and external stakeholders. And it all starts with why. Because if we don't have the why, it's really difficult to answer the external, the components and quadrants.
It's really important, Robbie, that you mentioned these why, how, and what, and that we need to have them quite clear as leaders. But I also believe, Robbie, that all those 3 are supported by trust. And trust as leader is something that is really hard to build, but probably quite easily to destroy. So any thoughts around this one?
And trust is a concept that takes a long time to build. And it's also, unfortunately, something that can be eroded rather quickly. And it's hard to build back. So trust is an amazing starting point for teams to feel safe, psychologically, emotionally, and even physically. Totally
agree with you, Robbie. And now jumping into the leadership topic, Robbie, and I told you this, and I must say this over here also, that personally there was like a before and after I joined your Leader Others course, and I had been in many leadership courses, but yours got like a specific things like totally different compared to others. And it's not only the practicality, but also, at the end of each day, it makes you think a lot of things. And, I still keep in mind that if you really want to develop as a leader, it's not only about you, it's more about developing others. So it's really interesting, this approach. And what I really like also is that, one day you will be training the guys at the United Nations, leaders on the top Eagle View. Next day, probably you will take a flight and you will be in a different continent, coaching and facilitating mid-managers, for example. And probably next day, you will be sharing experiences with guys actually doing, the hands-on job. So it's really interesting how you adapt to all these type of hierarchies, and and try to scale or skill them up on the leadership point of view. So Rob, can you share a little bit more about this leader like you approach?
Sure. In 2017, I had a bit of a burnout, and I was lying flat on my back looking at the ceiling for a while, wondering, what's this all about? And one thing is I realized that to say that, had a bit of a burnout, take some vulnerability to let people know that there are times and places where energy goes down and we need to build back up again. And as I was looking at the ceiling, wondering what possibly positive could come out of this other more self-care, I realized that there was a word that wasn't in the dictionary, which is leader-like. There's leather-like, ladylike, lunch-like. There's many words that begin with L and end with like. And any word that ends with like, what that grammatically means, has the characteristics of. So I looked online and said, leader-like. It didn't show up. And the beauty is that now I can create leader-like concept. And so the thought behind it is to ask people the question, no matter the situation, no matter the hierarchical level, looking at what's going on. Sometimes we put ourselves 100% in the situation. We're in the situation. We don't benefit from our own external coach looking down at us going, hey, Robbie, you know what? Listen, I think it wouldn't be a good idea to go ahead and say what you're about to say right now. Occasionally we're on autopilot and we do it. We don't accept coaching from our mini me, the 2% of us up there coaching us down here. In those moments, we're probably not in a leader-like position. When we can take 2% of ourselves out here and accept the reflection and go, oh yeah, yes, I've done this before in the past and it wasn't good. I think I'm going to hold back and not going to do that. I won't send the email. Then we're good. So the leader-like concept is to help people understand what's the most leaderish, leader-like approach right now. And is to build those responses. So it's success by design, not by chance, through consciously planned, thought through responses instead of unconscious reactions. And most humans would agree that we're better when we're in a conscious response frame than we're in an unconscious reaction frame. From experience, I certainly can speak to that.
Got your point, Robbie. And I recall that when we entered the room and you were over there, and it was quite interesting because at that room we got different type of organizational members. So we got mid managers, we got supervisors. There were also some guys from the leadership team, different nationalities. It was really interesting how diverse we were. And I recall also that you somehow, I noticed you start like asking specific questions, and I was like thinking like, hey, this guy is trying to, identify what is our skills levels regarding leadership, and you try to make that click. But Robbie, could you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I remember in Lázaro Cárdenas, when we did the training session, 8:30 a.m., in come 20 people and sit down at 4 tables, looking kind of like this. And I looked out at the group, as I look out at many groups, and I say, all right, who here in the room has had a great leader who could inspire you, give you direction, teach you the things you need to learn, hand off great best practices, who could stand up for you, share their experience, ask you great questions that got you to think? And then you can see people's eyes going, And I remember distinctly asking your group, as I asked many other groups, I said, all right, raise your hand in this room if you've never had a leader who could do all that. And I looked at the slides because I still have them. It was 3/4 of the people in the room. 15 people said, I've never had a leader who could do all that. And they go, do they have to do all of it? And I said, yeah, I want to know how many. Now, then there were 5 people in the room that said, I think I've had one of those leaders. Great. So I wrote it down, 5 people. They put their hands down. And I said, no, keep your hands up. How many of you 5 in your career have had 2 of those leaders? 3 of the hands dropped. There's only 2 people in the room had their hand up, kind of looking around like, am I the only one? And then of those 2 people with their hand up, I said, of you 2, how many of you have had 3 of those leaders in your life? 1 hand was up. Though the person with their hand up was like, sort of. And then I said, okay, have you had 4 of those? No. And I do this periodic, when I sit in front of a group, and I have a survey running on my website, leaderlikeyou.com. How many great leaders have you had? And it is usually never above 5. Careers are long. A lot of if you looked at the average tenure of people in that room, I remember had people who were safety, health, and environment who had been with the organization for 35, 40 years. Didn't raise their hand. What I find is there's a lot of opportunity for better leadership. And there are not a lot of examples of great leadership out there. So we have to create our model of leadership ourselves, which speaks to creating the leader-like approach.
I really like you mentioned this, Robbie, and leadership is not about popularity or becoming an influencer. I think that's not the end result. It's more about, having this positive impact in society and within your teams. And I totally agree that when you mentioned like how many good leaders you recall in your journey, few hands were raised. And so, really, really good point here. And Robbie, could you share a little bit more about the differences? And I think this is one of the most asked questions you may receive between, what is the difference between management and leadership? Could you share your thoughts about this one? Okay.
So imagine you have a sentence and there's going to be a blank in the sentence and you have a 2-word option to make the sentence grammatically correct. My people, and my bank account. Then you've got 2 words, lead and manage. Do you lead your bank account or do you manage your bank account? People look at there and they're like, oh yeah, I manage my bank account. And what about your people? I lead my people. And the outcome of this is we manage things. We should manage processes, procedures. Though at the end of the day, people want to be led a lot more than want to be managed. And so it's distinctly different. When I go someplace and I meet somebody who says, oh, you're going off to Copenhagen or you're going to, Paris or something. What do you do? And I tell them what I do. And they look at me, they're like, oh, you're a management consultant. And I say, no, I think they're pretty good at the spreadsheets and that kind of thing. I don't get involved in it that much. I'm much more of a leadership consultant than a management consultant. And occasionally you get a blank stare from them like, management, leadership, it's all the same. And it's not. I lead my people. I do it with them. I don't do it to them. I manage my bank account. And that for me is the essence of the difference between the two. One's tactical, one's inspirational, people-oriented. I will say this, Chris, you need both. It's not that management is bad and leadership is great. We do need to manage people, processes and what's going on. Though I believe we do too much management and not enough leading.
Fully agree with you, Robbie, and really nice example on when you need to lead and when you need to manage. And I am totally agree with you. We need to create a balance between those two. Robin, jumping back into the leader-like you approach, I really like this concept you share with us, this Septagon where you can see all the skills leaders need to develop to success on the leadership journey. And basically having clear when you need to wear the hat of a coach, of a trainer, of a facilitator, of a sponsor, among the other 7 concepts. So could you share a little bit more about this Septagon concept?
So when I was working at Citibank, I was fortunate to work for a wonderful woman who taught me a lot. And I realized she was a great leader. And I looked at some of my other great leaders and some of my near great leaders and some of the less great leaders and some that, frankly speaking, I got no inspiration from. I could not become motivated. And I codified what did they do or what didn't they do. And I found that there's 7 different skills, therefore 7 Latin septagon. We have hectagons, octagons, and then I have a septagon. So the 7 skills is lead, manage, train, consult, sponsor, mentor, and coach. And each one has a verb attached to it and some really specific skills. So for me, if I could start with the leader, as I mentioned earlier, it's the inspiration. And the leader is not the subject matter expert. A leader could be a subject matter expert before they come because maybe they were in the nitty gritty. Though the leader gets the team to do great things, not by what they always know. It's how they activate the team, inspire them, create the motivational circumstances, walk the talk, ensure there's a high-level helicopter view strategy, that they're open, vulnerable, not trying to be perfect, and that they can take guidance from people, and they can also take the team to a safe place and say, I'll get you there. And then the leader is able to show up as what I call the trusted advisor, demonstrating that they're competent, and then they have the professional capabilities of leadership to take the team where they need to be. And the minute a leader shows up, people are subliminally scanning the horizon for, is this person competent, confident? Can they get the job done? And will it be a pleasure to work with them? So it's not about subject matter expertise. It's them getting the subject matter experts to do the stuff. Then comes the manager. The manager's tactical. The manager gets stuff done, that manager hat, if you like, as you said, by telling people, you do this, you do that, delegating. So it's not just delegating, it's delegating and following up. Because if we only delegate, we're almost abdicating. It's the follow-up that allows the harvest to say, all right, here's the task. When can I check with you? Let me delegate and let me follow up. The managerial side in the Septagon is rolling out that high-level strategy at the detail level, more granular. The manager does not necessarily have to be the subject matter expert. The manager activates subject matter experts. The manager could be one. So the manager is good at telling people what to do, getting them to do it, ensuring it got done. Moving around the Septagon is the training piece. We need to constantly improve, renew, refresh, and leaders make sure that their people have a personal development plan. And Chris, I got to tell you something. Universal human truth. When I look out at a group of people and I say, all right, who here has a personal development plan? They roll their eyes and go, oh gosh, not personal development plans. It's so boring. And that's unfortunate because many organizations, they go through the quarterly, the annual, the semi-annual review. And at the end, they're like, oh yeah, wait, the development plan. Let's take this thing off. You're going to take a class next year? Oh yeah, what are you going to do? Oh, project management. All right, great. Oh, we got a development plan. That's not a development plan. The Center for Creative Leadership in the 1980s created this concept called 70-20-10. And I don't know if it's 70-20-10, though predominantly 70. Your development comes through what do you want to learn on the job? How do you get better at the job you're doing? How do we move you out of the comfort zone into the stretch zone? How do we take you to the next level? So the development plan and the training side is, what do you want to get better at in your job? And then a portion of people's development comes through you as a leader coaching them and mentoring them so that they have some coaching and mentoring available. And the smallest component of people's development and training is the formalized stuff. Watching TED Talks, reading journals, going to classes, attending events. And sometimes it's the only one that's portrayed as important. Though the training component of a leader is to ensure that your people have the skills and that they have the will to learn. The next element of the Septagon is the consultant in us. Many people come to the table with many years of experience. Chris, how many years do you have in shipping and in ports and in logistics?
Yeah, like 10 years, yeah.
Yeah, so you know a lot of stuff. You have benchmarks. You have best practices. And as a leader, showing up and sharing them, saying, hey, I have something that will help you as a team. Here's a benchmark. Here's a best practice. So we step into the consultantness inside us, or we bring in consultants, or we activate the consultant in them. Now, the trainer is a subject matter expert. The consultant is a subject matter expert. The next one is the sponsor. Now, I've been talking about the sponsor for years. Pre-COVID, people look at me and go, what do you mean? I said, well, the sponsor stands up and makes sure your people are healthy, they're well, they're taken care of, they're safe. If they're on a project and they might be more junior, maybe they make some mistakes. The team around could say, hey, let's take Petra off the project. Look what she's doing. The sponsor steps in and says, let me work with Petra. Let me harvest the learnings here. I need to protect her. She's on a learning voyage. She needs to get better with this. Oh, okay. Leave her on. They'll help her out. Now, during COVID, people started to understand the sponsor, making sure my people at home, are they well? Do they have masks? Do they have a chair to sit on? Do they have a place to work? Are they taking good care of their well-being? Are they taking breaks? Are they getting sun? Are they getting exercise? How are they doing? So now people start to understand the sponsor. Moving further on, the Septagon is the mentor. I worked for an organization that had a mentor, and they said, you're going to be working with Alexander. He's going to be your mentor. You'll see him once a month for 20 minutes. So I would go up and sit at his table, and we had relatively lackluster conversations. They were not very inspiring. HR called me and said, your mentor told us that the conversations don't really seem to be good, and it appears it might be a waste of your time. Yeah, I felt it. I didn't know how to identify it. So the woman who had hired me to this training program said, let me ask you some questions. Are you asking your mentor to share all their relevant experience and advice? No. Have you contracted with your mentor about what's the political world you're in and how they give you advice to the do's and don'ts of your project? No, I didn't know I could do that. Have you asked your mentor to open doors for you inside and outside the organization? No. Have you shadowed your mentor for a day or two just to silently, quietly watch what they do, write it down and debrief with them? How did they do it? What did they learn? No, I didn't know. And so my coach at the time, Candy was her name. She said, do you think you're using your mentor right? And I said, I had no idea. And very often people use the word, though they don't really know what it is. So the mentor is to guide and give advice. And then the last one is the coach in us. Now, coach, people think of sports teams. Very often the coach is the trainer. In the business and organizational world, I always say, let's think, where did the word coach come from? And a coach is a horse-drawn carriage that automobiles and electric cars took people from point A to point B. And that's what the coach does. It helps take people from where they are to where they need to go. And much like when we get into an Uber or any taxi, the first thing the driver asks or you need to put online is what's your destination? So the coach is helping understand, where do you want to go? How can I help you get there? Though it doesn't use any of the other skills, the one to use is activating by asking questions where the person being coached can self-reflect and respond. And the coach is not a subject matter expert at all, except in the interpersonal human questioning technique. So the Leadership Septagon, 7 skills, 7 verbs, lots of granularity, they overlap. And the question to ask is, what do I need to be doing right now? What is the leader-like approach to this situation? Do I tell them what to do and it takes 2 minutes and they don't learn anything? Do I ask them, well, Mike, you've been doing the job for 2 years. What do you think you need to do? Or do you give them some advice? Mike, you know what? I was facing the same thing. Here's what I did. You give him resources. Or do you teach Mike to do something, because if he doesn't know, he can't possibly know. So the question is, which skill do I need now? And I find that once you've mastered the Leadership Septagon, it doesn't matter what level you're at. Entry level, middle, high, we can always use it. It's passe-partout. So there you have the Leadership Septagon.
Really interesting concept, Robbie, and you touch so many aspects here, but I really like this PDP aspect you mentioned, and yeah, it's not only a checkbox. I believe this PDP is something really personal, you know. You need to identify your weakness, strengths, and create this roadmap on how you will be improving those needed skills to develop your leadership styles, among many other aspects. And you know, also keeping a journal of your lesson learned on that journey. But Robbie, I would like to hear from you. You know, you are normally having your leadership trainings, your Leaderlike training worldwide, you know, not only with the top management, also with mid management and the people doing basically the hands on the job. But when companies reach you out, you know, what are their concerns, or you know, why do we need the leader like you approach within our companies and teams?
Well, one of the reasons I think why what I do is pertinent to them and germane to the conversation is we are on a transition, and in the transition, sometimes we're only leading ourselves. You know, I have my job to do and I do my job, and I'm part of a team, and I come and I do my job and then I go. I care about our values. I care about what I do, though at the end of the day, I lead myself. If you lead yourself well, sometimes somebody will notice you and say, hey, Raj or Maria, how about you lead the team? Now I'm on a transition voyage where I have to leave behind all the skills I was good at to do my own job. I have to learn how to lead my team. So part of what I do is help people transition from that individual contributor to leading other people, and help people use this concept called the Leadership Pipeline, which was a book which was created by Ron Sharon, Noel, and Drotter, who were people who had been at GE. And I fully subscribe to it and give them full credit for it. Every time we change roles, we have to take a step back and look at our work values. What did I like? What should I like in the new job? What are my skills that I need? What was I good at before? But what do I need to be good at now? And time. How do I spend my time? Before I used to spend my time doing my job. Now I have to spend my time being available for people, delegating, following up, getting work done through other people, helping them be successful. So the transition from individual contributor to leader of others, to leader of leaders, to functional leader, and helping people realize that work time skills shifts each time. And one thing I've noticed even during COVID is that in the hybrid world, we have to activate people a bit differently. Online, offline. I've got some people in the office. I've got some people out. And I've done a lot of virtual leadership and hybrid leadership seminars so that people remember what it's like to run hybrid teams where I've got part of the people face-to-face, I've got part of the people distance. How do I keep an even footing so that I'm not simply favoring one or other population? And it almost doesn't matter what industry you're in. It doesn't matter pretty much where you are. You know, I work from, I'd say, Los Angeles to Qingdao, from Helsinki down to South Africa, from Canada down to Uruguay and Buenos Aires. It flies under culture. And I would say 80 to 90% is archetypal. In other words, it doesn't matter where you are. Though there is also a conversation to say, you know, what is the adaptation piece you need for your culture right now? And being open to cross-cultural communications allows me to then entertain that conversation with people. You know, if you're leading in a group-oriented world, here's how you lead. If you're leading an individual-oriented world, here's how you lead. So is enabling that conversation at many levels, many cultures.
I really like you mentioned this leadership pipeline, Robbie, and I keep in mind always that you know, once you're leading a team, it's not only preparing them to the next step. It's also about, like, if you really want to go to the next step, you need to develop your team so they can also go to the next step. And that's what I really like about your concept. Like, you know, like, it's not only about you, it's also about others. But the part of this development, Robbie, there is an important aspect here, and is feedback. And when we talk about, you know, giving feedback, receiving feedback is also part of the process. But sometimes we can also face this criticism. So could you tell a little bit more about what is the difference between those two?
Well, there are certain words that trigger people's behavior because our brain has an instant recollection filing cabinet. So when we walk up to somebody and I would say, hey, Chris, do you have a minute for me? You'd say, yeah, Robbie, go ahead. So, hey, Chris, do you have a minute for me?
Go ahead, Robbie.
Yeah, listen, I want to give you some feedback about the team meeting last week. Okay, pause. Then I ask people, how do you feel in your stomach? Is it going to be good or bad? I'm like, it's not going to be, it might not be great. Here's the thing. Feedback triggers people to many negative responses because they're like, oh, I've had feedback before and it's not great. Chris, if I had great news for you, would I use the word feedback? Probably not. I'd say, Chris, I heard the team was so happy the way you led the meeting when I was off on the seminar. This is, wow, what did you do? We would go right into it. So when we have to come with feedback, we start to use these words. So one of the things I teach people is maybe you don't even want to use the word feedback. Use the word thoughts or input. Say, hey, Chris, do you have a couple of minutes? I wanted to share some input with you about the team meeting last week. Chris, which one would you rather hear? I have some feedback, or I'd like to talk. I have some thoughts and some input.
Yeah, I prefer the other. Yeah, thoughts or inputs. Yeah.
And then what I learned is instead of me saying something and giving my judgment and evaluation right away is I'd say, well, thanks for stepping in to do the team meeting last week. How do you think it went? Self-evaluation. Chris, I tell you what, give me two things. Tell me what you think went well and how you can be even better next time. And so once I've heard that, I know where to go with it. So I can say, that's interesting because I also heard that this went well and this went well. So by helping people realize what went well, in our development journey, we're creating a path of here are the things I did. Okay, I need to keep doing them or do even better. Very often in feedback, there's something that comes in. Should've, would've, or could've. The problem with should've, would've, and could've, it presupposes you could change the past. Chris, I know you're good at a lot. But the thing is, you can't change the past. I can change the past. So by using words should've, would've, or could've, we're almost presupposing you're wrong in the past. And people give you this a bit defensive response to the whole input feedback conversation. So the other thing I've learned to do is not use those words, is couch them with, say, let's think what we could do or you could do even better next time. I could give it an agenda. Okay, what else would you like to do next time? Maybe I should spend an hour. Okay, great. All right. And then at the end, recap. Okay, so these 3 things are what you said went really well. And here are the things that you say didn't go well enough and you'd like to redo them or do them differently in the future. How can I support you? And there is one magic component in there, and I do believe that I work with your group on that, is no buts and no howevers, because there's no word that triggers people's negative emotions more than but and however. So is when you join it together, here's what went well. Either use 2 sentences, use a semicolon, or join it together with and. I just did an exercise on Monday and Tuesday at the United Nations. I did the same exercise with them about the but and the and. Round 1 and round 2 of this exercise, with round 1 with the but was really bad. Round 2 was 36,958% better mathematically with the and than the but. So one of the messages I tell leaders and team members at all levels and around the world is but and however will invite resistance, unwanted sabotage, and people will not listen so much as they will resist. I want to share something that I got on my desk, and I'm going to reach for it.
Okay.
So I got this on my desk in Guangzhou. And my group in China said, after the exercise yesterday about the but and the and, at lunch, we sat down and we really realized that there are 11 versions of but kind of words in Chinese and Mandarin, and there is only one and. And so the training on the but and the and feedback, it's not about English. It's not about French, Spanish, German, Turkish. It transcends them. So when you're giving input to your people, think before you do it. Self-evaluation, what went well, even better next time when, and instead of but.
I really like you mentioned this topic about the bot and however, and since 2017 that I joined your course, I had been taking quite seriously, a watch on those 2 words. So it's also quite challenging, but we need to be aware of just as you mentioned, think quite well before talking and how we'll be giving a feedback. But Robbie, coming back into the leadership journey, you had been training leaders for a while. Had you noticed like a common pitfall on this leadership journey?
I find people fall back into the management of telling people what to do. And if you think of the word supervising them, what does the word supervise mean? Super, above, vise, look. So I'm looking down at you and I'm looking at what you're doing. For me, that could also be micromanagement. And I think what micromanagement does is gives us quick wins. I get it done in a minute because I tell exactly what I need to do, though I don't create a self-guided learner for the future. And I find that we don't use enough of the Septagon. And a lot of people manage too much. Lead, not enough.
Fully agree with you, Robbie. And well, I can see also in your background, Robbie, that after I finalized your course, I tried to put together in one paper all the concepts and lessons learned, and it was a really interesting and challenging one to put all those together in one visual. But do you think that there is from the leadership point of view, a major change on those concepts until now?
In terms of leadership?
Yeah.
I'd say what's happened is that through COVID, leaders, not that it wasn't required, though I think leaders have realized the human face, the vulnerability, the ability to be with people where they are has become even more important. And he's getting people through uncertain circumstances in a guiding and safe way. And I found it's not so much leadership changed, is the appetite to entertain the conversation has opened up.
Got your point, Robbie. And yeah, I may say yes. A lot of things going on regarding the leadership styles needed, especially after this pandemic. But Robbie, we had touched all these changes regarding this, COVID-19 stuff, the leadership skills needed. But then there is a main concern these days, and it's regarding environmental aspects and in the way how we do business. And climate change is on top of most of the top management boards these days. And sadly, there is a lot of greenwash also. Some other consider climate change as a buzzword. So could you share a little bit more what is the role of the leader regarding these environmental topics?
Well, I salute organizations. I work with some financial institutions who are subscribing to the, environmental and social guidelines and the United Nations commitments. They're divesting certain environmental practices. They're not investing in certain industries that pollute. So that's at an organizational level. And if we only say, oh, yeah, we do it. Oh, look, it's up on the conference room wall. We do this. We have the statistics. Though I think if you take it down to a leader level, we really have to walk the talk. Do we consume at the workplace? I go take out and I bring a plastic dish back with plastic fork, and I'm eating with it's holding in a plastic bag. And though at the same time I'm saying, we need to have, a green future here. And then my team looks and it's like, what about your meal? I'm all for world trade, though the question is, what's the carbon footprint of what I'm saying and doing and how that's working? So a lot of it starts with the leader. And are we walking the talk for the things we stand up for? Do we offset carbon? Do we walk instead of take transportation? Do we use our bike? And all that starts with the leader and the team. How often do we use wastewater? Do we turn the lights off when we go? Do we encourage people to use energy saving cars and things? So it all starts there. Can we get rid of certain environmental practices?
Fully agree with you, Robbie. And, I personally believe that, there are things totally out of our control, but some others we can do control them. And especially regarding these environmental topics, I think that we can start making small steps, and those small steps in a worldwide scales can have a major impact. So I think we can start doing some stuff as a personal level, and taking a look on our CO2 footprints, considering our way of transportation, among many others. But sadly, Robbie, we can spend all day here. I really love every time we got a chance to have these type of discussions. But as a final thought, Robbie, so what will be your message for worldwide leaders, especially these days that we are facing constant changes, not only in our way of living, but also in our way of making business. So what would be your main thoughts?
Well, surprisingly enough, when I work with people, I ask them, who has children? Some people raise their hand. I say, okay, that doesn't mean the rest of you, I can't ask the next question. I say, who remembers what it was like to be a child? They raise their hand. They're like, yeah, it's a long time ago. I say, what was the skill you learned or taught your children to cross the street safely? Like, wait, we're in a leadership seminar. Why are we talking about cross the street safely? And there are three things that I find if I'm working with a group in Russia or in Finland or in the United States or somewhere else is stop, look, listen, make a decision. And when we stop what we're doing momentarily, 7 seconds, whatever, and look at what's going around. So we connect ourselves not only to what's happening inside, to outside, listen to those voices, listen to the internal voices, and then ask ourselves, what's the most leader-like thing to do? And you know, if we look at my board here, is really helping people be successful by design, not by chance, through conscious responses instead of unconscious reactions. And stop, look, listen sometimes is the most important thing to do, as basic as it is.
Fully agree with you, Robbie, and I really like this crossing the road concept, and I for sure will keep it in mind. And yeah, for all the viewers and people watching this episode, I fully recommend if you are able to join a leadership course, or if you're willing to join one of those leadership courses, for sure keep in mind the Leader Like You. Personally, was like a life-changing course.
It's a distinct pleasure to work with the group and activate them, and watch people who come in from the 8:30 in the morning Monday kind of like, yeah, okay, get on with it, show me the PowerPoint. Even the online session, to then watch them at the end to have a firm commitment of what they want to say and do differently, and realize that it's not complicated stuff, though it is life-changing, and by turning that dial affects a lot of other people's worlds. They live better. And the concept of who's had a great, wonderful leader, Chris, one of the last questions you may remember is I asked the leaders in that room, if I had down the hall in another room all the people who were ever led by you, and I ran down there and asked them, hey, you were led by Miguel or Marie or Petra, have they been a wonderful leader for you? Would they raise their hand for you? So what are the conditions we need to create so that people would raise their hand for you as a wonderful, inspiring leader? And it's that shift that is the distinct pleasure for me to watch and help people go through.
That's totally right, Robbie. And yeah, I still recall, you know, our faces on the day one, and then the day 5, like, hey, can we extend this course? You know, like it was really, really a pleasure to meet you there and discuss with all members of that team at that moment. So, Robbie, as I told you, I really appreciate you got some time to share with us and the viewers. We are always welcome to join these sessions, and I really appreciate your time. So really, really grateful for this episode, Robbie, and hope you can meet us in a future one.
Thank you very much. And Chris, I want to let you know that I have your picture here in my office. A lot of people ask me what it's all about. and I share with them the generous gift you gave me of, I believe you stayed up all night to paint it for me. So thank you. And I'm happy that it's been valuable for you. And I hope that this helps people activate a facet of their leadership.
Thanks, Robbie.
Thank you.
So hope you like this session. Really interesting thoughts shared by Robbie, how it's all this leader like you approach, all these Septagon skills needed for develop your leadership styles. Really, really nice topics regarding how you should give feedback. You will also need to receive feedback on this leadership journey. What is the difference between management and leadership? So really, really interesting thoughts shared here. Let me know in the comments below, what are you currently doing to develop your leadership skills, and what you consider is the most needed skill these days as a leader. So don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to our channel.